We are technically in the same mishnah according to at least the one count, but it's a different person and a different statement and a completely different subject. So Rabbi Masya ben Harash Omer, Hevi makdim bishlom kol adam, veheve zanav la'arayos ve'alti rosh lashualim. And we'll stop there. Who would like to try to translate this? It's not the easiest English. I think you can get the gist of Hevi makdim bishlom kol adam, but the exact phrasing I actually did not get till today. Yeah, tomorrow?
Wait, did we have this in Tehillim? Does this mean greet?
Yeah, it does mean greet. Yeah, we did have this in Tillim. Good call. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess you should greet everyone with peace. I mean, like I think that means something not awkward in Hebrew.
Yeah. Okay. So
Um,
I'll comment on this now. So yeah, we had in Tehillim lahakdim penei, right? Like to so these don't really translate in English. Makdim bishalom kol adam. I think the best translation I've seen for this is be the first to greet every person. Okay. I translated it for a while as preemptively greet every person because makdim literally means to be like to make early, and bishlom is the peace or the welfare of every person. But I think best idiomatic translation would be the first to greet every person. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
and be the tail for Arios.
Yeah, so Arios here is with an aleph, not an ayin.
Oh,
Like
I don't think I know what that means.
it's an animal. Ari.
Lions?
Lions. Yeah, okay, right. Be a tail to lions. The alti rosh lashulim.
And don't be a head to
Yeah, to
another animal. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure this is foxes. Okay. It might be that there's some sort of other animal. You got to ask Rabbi Nelson Slifkin, who knows animals better than I do. Yeah. Now let me explain why I have the brackets here. So every edition of the Mishnah I've seen, including the ones in the Sidurim, just end the Mishnah after Shualim. But a lot of the Mefarshim apparently were working with a version of the Mishnah that quoted this pasuk in Mishlei. Okay. And it's possible tomorrow that you've even learned this pasuk with me in a Monday night shiur. I think this was a Monday night pasuk. So Shneimar, as it is stated. Okay, now this one lends itself to two translations. Okay, you want to give it a shot? Holech es chachamim yachkam v'roek silim yeroa.
Someone who walks with Chachamim
Yeah.
will become wise,
Yep.
and somebody who shepherds fools will become bad. It looks
Okay,
like the
yeah.
same
So
word, but I
I
don't
know. So
know.
this is that's how I would have translated it also. This is a very strange usage of this shoresh. I think the shoresh is actually I don't know what the actual shoresh is. Actually, I'm gonna just check on the BDB here for a second here. Hold on. For those who don't know, on all Torah, the BDB. So if you go to Mikros Gedolos, and you go to anything, the BDB is this academic dictionary that you get by just clicking on the word, and it'll take you to here. So yeah, so it is from Reish Ayin Ayin. So it means to be bad, be displeasing. Let's see if they have the one that is actually the application. Oh yeah, to break. Okay, it also means to break. All right. And apparently this is from an Aramaic loan word because in Aramaic the tzadis become ayins. So for example, the word eitz, aleph tzadi becomes a'a in Aramaic. Okay. Or what's the other common one? Eretz becomes ara. Okay, so ratzat, which means to smash, becomes ra'a. So all as far as I know, like the majority of the Mefarshim on this pasuk say, one who shepherds fools will be smashed or broken, shattered. Maybe I'm not sure which one's the best one. Okay, that's Mishlei 13:20. Okay, now I want to point out just another thing here. So you translated one who walks with the wise. So there's actually two ways to translate each half. Either one who walks with the eyes with the wise will become wise, but one who befriends fools will be smashed. And then the other one is one who walks with the wise will become wise. Sorry, one who walks after the wise will become wise, but one who shepherds fools will be smashed. The reason why I think that's the translation here is because it has to do with following someone and then leading someone. Okay. So be a tail to lions and don't be a head to foxes. Okay, so let me put this in the chat so you can have it at your access. Okay, so what are the questions and problems This one is this one. So by the way, I said this in the description of the shiur. This one we can analyze and have a normal Pirkei Avos shiur. Okay, last time was Sforno, like discourse on reward and punishment. This is going to be a more like typical shiur. So what are the questions and problems? Yeah, Racheli.
What's the relation between being the first to greet people and being a tail to lions?
Okay, so that is going to be the major question here. What is the relationship between, I'm going to call it the first clause and the second clause, just to make things simpler, okay? Now, here's the thing. You don't have to say that they're related, but to me, it seems like they should be related. And the reason why I say that is because there are, okay, well, the reason why you don't have to say that they're related is because a person can say many things. Like he could say two things that are unrelated. The reason why I think it has to be related is because if you look in Pirkei Avos, let's look at an earlier chapter here. For example, you've got Raman Gamliel Benosha Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi Omer. So he says this one thing. Then we have a second statement from him in a different mishnah. Then we have a third statement of him in a different mishnah. Then we have a fourth statement of him in a different mishnah. Then we have a fifth statement of him in a different mishnah. Then we have, so like you could split it up into different mishnayos. So the fact that they put this into one and it is joined by the word and, to me, seems like you have to say that they're connected. Okay, so I think that's a good question. Yeah, Alex.
I'm curious what we're to gain from these specific animals in the specific order.
Yeah. Okay. So so what is the implication of these I guess not the implication, that's the wrong word here. What is the I guess the connotation, right? Maybe the cultural connotation? Cultural connotation and or significance of these animals. Did you say in this order?
Yeah, like why the lion with the tail and the head with the fox.
Okay, yeah, but you're not saying
well.
you're not saying why doesn't it say don't be a head to foxes before it says the tail to lions? You're saying why associate each part with each animal?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, right. And why associate each part with each animal? Okay, I want to do one thing. Hold on just a second. Do I have it? Oh, wait, hold on. Just a second. Okay, I don't have it, but those who have followed my stuff for a while know that so the most important Torah shiur I've ever given is the 13 midos of Rachamim shiur, but the most important shiur I've given is of Wolves, Men, and Methodology, okay, which is based on a book called Of Wolves and Men by Barry Lopez, and it's essentially a book about examining wolves. It's not a Torah book. It's a book about examining wolves from 4 different perspectives, from the perspective of science, from the perspective like biologists and zoologists, from the perspective of native people who live around wolves, from the perspective of hunters, and then from the perspective of folklore. So one of the things that was eye-opening to me is just like, if you look at the wolf in folklore, I mean, it's not surprising. It's just like eye-opening the variety of cultural connotations that are different in different cultures for what the wolf is and what it signifies. So like, it's very hard to like look at this and like for us to figure out what Chazal meant by it, Now, it happens to be we're going to be in the same place as the commentaries because the commentaries we use are the medieval commentaries. So they were like 1,000 years removed from Chazal. That's also far enough away that like they might also not know. But like, yeah, I mean, if you go to, let's say like, I don't know, like 2nd century, Eretz Yisrael or Bavel, I don't know what people thought of foxes or lions. Okay, so like that's gonna be the question here. I'm gonna make the tail and the head a separate question here. So what is the implication of the lion's tail versus the fox's head? Yeah, okay, good. And those could be joined, but I think just having it being separate is better. Yeah, okay, Vanessa.
I think it's like pretty straightforward, but just for the sake of asking a question, what does the Mishlei pasuk like? Why do they bring in this Mishlei pasuk instead of any other?
Okay, right. So what role does the Mishlei pasuk play in this? Okay, like if it's evidence, how does it support the Mishnah? If it's a development of the idea, what does it add? Yeah, Vanessa.
I feel like I always ask this. What's the Havamina? Like, what would be?
Okay, no, that's a good question to drill into. So I'll explain what she means by Havamina again. But what is the Hava Amina? Okay, so Hava Amina is a Gemara term that means it means the the initial false assumption that you would have had. Okay, so for example, if I don't know, I'm making a random thing just because Rachel is, I don't even know if you're wearing yellow, but if someone said to you, like, by the way, you are allowed to wear yellow, okay, so then the havamina is that you would not be allowed to wear yellow. So the question, what is the havamina, would be, why would we think that you couldn't wear yellow such that you had to be told that you can wear yellow? So here, what is the havamina? Why do we have to be told either of these clauses? Okay, so in other words, why would we think that we shouldn't greet every person first? Why would we think that, you know, we shouldn't be a tail to lions and should be a head to foxes? Yeah, Tamar.
I was gonna ask, what's the significance of greeting someone first?
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's kind of two questions. What's the significance of greeting someone? Like, why are we talking about that? And then why first?
Yeah, of greeting someone in general and specifically first. Okay. And before we even say what's the significance of greeting someone, I also just want to ask, like, what does it mean to be makdim bishalom in general? Like, is this saying hi or asking how they're doing or what? Okay, like because again, it's in English you have greeting as a word. In Hebrew, it is like you have she'elas shalom, which literally means like asking about their peace. So sometimes that's used to just mean saying hello. Sometimes it's used to mean like actually like, inquiring about their welfare. So what does it mean here? Yeah, Vanessa.
I had two questions. Tamar took the first one and asked it better, and I forgot the second one. I'll come back.
Okay. Racheli.
For question 4, I'm like thinking of something about the cultural connotation, but I don't know if I should save it for when we're trying to answer.
Yeah, save it for when we have answers unless it's a question. Okay. Yeah, Vanessa.
We asked this for Pirkei Avos, who is this meant for? Like, who's the audience? And I think I specifically want to ask that in the context of the first clause of like, is this just meant for like people in leadership positions or like people who are like ultra pious so that people have a good impression of people who are in that position? Or like, is this an expectation that everyone should always like greet someone first, which is how like I think it's easier to read it in first glance.
Okay, good question. So I'll write the question, then I'll fill people in on the premises of the question here. So who is the intended audience? To what extent is this for the specific audience of Pirkei Avos, which is leaders and people who are striving to become extra righteous, and to what extent does this apply to all people? Yeah. So our working thesis, which is based on a Gemara that says which means someone who wants to become a chassid here, not someone who follows the Hasidic movement, but chassid meaning a person who goes beyond the letter of the law. And so we call that extra righteous. So someone who is trying to become extra righteous, should fulfill the principles of Avos, of Pirkei Avos. And then we also see from the Rambam and Sforno and others that Pirkei Avos was written primarily for judges and for the leaders of the community. So we always ask this question, and we've seen certain mishnayos that seem to be like only for those types of people. And if you were to implement them as an average person, it would be disastrous. Okay. So for example, my favorite example of this is there's one that says, Aseh Torascha, Aseh Torascha, I forgot, hold on a second here. Torascha Keva, yeah. Aseh Torascha Keva. Where am I getting this from? Is this it? Rashi. Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. So Rashi says, this literally means, this is from Shammai in 1:15, make your Torah fixed or permanent. So Rashi says, Shelo tehet kovea la'itim. You should not establish fixed times for Torah study. Ela kol hayom. You should learn all day. Okay. Now, why is that disastrous? Because if you look at the halacha in Hilchos Talmud Torah, the laws of Torah study, the halacha is that every person should have set times for Torah study. That's the actual halacha. And not only is it the halacha, it is, I teach students who are post high school and many of whom are like juggling responsibilities with school and then eventually with job, marriage, kids. And so one of the questions they always have is like, how do I transition from being someone who's learning full time to someone who has all these other responsibilities? And my answer, my tactical answer is be koveh itim the Torah. Make set times where no matter what, you stop what you're doing and you learn, even if it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And that is how your Torah study will survive, okay? So if you follow Rashi here, he's saying, don't do that. He's saying, learn all day. But if you take an average person and you say, learn all day, they'll end up, it's unrealistic and they'll end up like giving up and then they won't learn at all, So certain mishnayos are clearly not for the average person. But then other mishnayos, like a little bit earlier, Yehoshua ben Prachia says, Aseh lecha rav, make a rabbi for yourself. That applies to everyone. Knei lecha chaver, acquire a friend. Good advice for everyone. And have you done es kol adam l'kav zchus, judge everyone favorably. So that's equal for everyone. So that's why Vanessa is asking, who's the intended audience and to what extent is this for us, like not people who are extra righteous, and to what extent is this for leaders or people who are on the cusp of becoming extra righteous? Okay, Racheli.
For the Mishlei thing,
Yeah.
it says that one who walks after the wise will become wise, so will become similar to those they walk after.
Right.
But someone who shepherds fools will be smashed, and I don't understand how fools are smashed. So like there's a difference in
right.
there.
Okay, so here's the thing, okay? You know how much I love Mishlei, okay? The temptation is going to be to approach the pasuk in Mishlei the way that we would normally, which is to ask all the questions on it. But I fear that if we do that, then this will change into a Mishlei shiur. So it's a good question, but we're going to kind of take this from a perspective of like, what's the main gist of it? Okay, so that's a very good question, but we're going to just leave it at like bird's eye view here. Okay. Okay, I think these are all the questions. Are we missing any? Oh no, we are missing a couple. Yeah, Vanessa?
This might be too nitty-gritty, but I feel like it's not a perfect opposite between the tail to lions and the head to foxes. A tail, I think when you read this, your first thing is like, oh, okay, like follow great people instead of leading bad people, but like a tail implies the very, very end instead of just part of a crowd, whereas like shepherding, being the head of like a bunch of group of people, like the rest of the group of people, like there's no implied structure. Does that question make sense?
Yeah, so I think the question that you're responding to, which is one of the questions I was looking for here, is practically speaking, how does one do or not do this? Okay, like what does it mean practically to be a tail to lions and a head of foxes? And your question is assuming a certain definition of what that is, but I think we should just ask like what does it mean? Okay, I think like, and I'm not dismissing your possibility. I'm just saying like we should ask the question first.
Oh, for sure. I just didn't know how to formulate it without the assumption.
No worries. Okay, I thought I had one more question. Do we ask why? Yeah, I guess that's what Tamara was asking. Why should we do this? But we did not ask why about the foxes and stuff, right? So why? Okay. And Mishlei, if you hold that this part is part of the Mishnah, then that's kind of answering why. But if he just says be a tail to lions and don't be a head to foxes, he's not telling you why. So we have to say like, why is this? Okay. Okay. So now, since this is a normal Pirkei Avos here, let's just take what I'm most interested in here is let's keep our eye on. Actually, let me do this. Let me copy and paste the questions into the chat like I usually do, so you can look at them at your will. And then what I want to do is I want to open the floor to answering questions, but what I really think we should do is aim to answer question 1, because if you answer question 1, like that's the one that's going to unlock everything, so like you can answer other stuff. Obviously you're going to need to answer other stuff to answer question 1, but like if you want to focus on something, try focusing on the first question. So does anyone have any interpretation? So Rachel, you wanted to comment on the foxes and lions, right?
Yeah, I was just thinking of the story with Rabbi Akiva and other sages where they see foxes and then everyone's crying except for Rabbi Akiva, but it's just the connotation of the fox is that it's like a very lowly animal.
Okay, good call. And that's actually reminding me where I could look to figher out whether shualim is actually foxes. Okay, So you have here on Torah. This is not complete yet, by the way, but on many things on the first two books of Chumash and on certain Megillos, maybe all the Megillos, you have the translation of Neima Novetsky. That's the wife of Rabbi Hillel Novetsky, who runs the site, and her translation is annotated, and the goal in her translation is to basically simulate, or that's a wrong word, but like to provide as much nuance from the Hebrew and from modern knowledge as possible. So let's see if she says on the pasuk, Al Har Tzion Sheshamim Shualim Hilchuvo. So she translates this as over Mount Zion that is desolate, jackals trample it. So she says jackals. Shualim, though in modern Hebrew this refers to foxes, in Tanakh it might refer to jackals. Both often haunt deserted ruins. The identification of a shual as a jackal stems from the description of Shimshon gathering 300 shualim in Shoftim 15:4. As foxes are solitary while jackals are gregarious, the description would appear to match the latter. Okay, so it could be jackals. Okay, but I mean, this doesn't affect what you're saying. You're saying that foxes still are associated with the Rabbi Akiva mourning over the Mikdash thing. Jackals. Let's say jackals. Yeah. Okay. Was there a hand that just shot up? No. Okay.
There was. I put it down.
Yeah. Okay. I'm actually not going to write down our approaches right now. I'm going to save this for the Mefarshim here. All right. Anyone else have any approaches for any of these questions here? The first one is probably the most accessible. Why should you be the first to greet every person? Yeah, Vanessa?
The way I've had it explained is like, you don't want to just be that haughty guy that waits for other people to be like, oh my gosh, hi. Like, you don't want to make yourself self-important. So you go up and say hi first. And it's also just like inviting and like warm and whatever.
Yeah.
And this is half baked. This is just thinking out loud.
Sure.
I think you could also take that too far and be like, oh, like, look at me. I'm the greeter. Like, I'm the one who's like asserting it and making everyone else comfortable. Like, that can easily get to your head. So it's saying to put, yeah, you're doing a good thing, but make sure you're humbling yourself while you're still in that good state and you're not being ahead of like arrogance.
Okay, good. So in other words, greeting people is something that can cultivate humility, but because you're making yourself, you're acknowledging the other person rather than waiting for them to acknowledge you. But the second clause is like mitigating that, because you could take those types of things too far. And so it's saying that you should still subordinate yourself to lions, whatever that means. Okay, that's a good interpretation of the first clause and theory about the connection. Yeah, Racheli?
I have a question, which is kind of on your Mishlei approach, but
sure.
What kind of fool do you usually translate ksilim as?
Yeah, so ksil, our working definition of ksil, we have two working definitions. One definition is from Rabinu Yona, who says that in Mishlei 122, he defines ksil as, let me just read it because I have it. 122, Rabinu Yona. Oops. Ksilim are, I went too far. Yeah. Came Bali Hapulos Haraos. These are people who do bad actions, who are like characterized by bad actions. The Ovrim Averos, and they violate halacha. Lamalos mishalos einehem beinyane hanaosam tanugehem. In order to fulfill what their eyes seek, and in regards to pleasures and enjoyments. So the way we define this, the way we summarize this, is a veteran seeker, someone who is long accustomed to just seek out whatever pleasure they want. Like, this is like an overboard hedonist. And then the other definition we have of it, they're not mutually exclusive, but the other feature of the ksil is that he also ends up expecting reality to conform to his desires, as opposed to attempting to conform to reality's desires. So that's a ksil. But sometimes it just means a generic bad decision maker.
Right. I was just wondering if there was any correlation between like foxes having like a sly connotation.
Yeah, so that's one of those things where, like, in our culture, foxes are known with being sly, but especially if this is jackals, like, is that really, this is why, like, it's a very speculative game here. By the way, just another methodology thing. Another reason I don't want to go so into depth with the Mishlei is because, according to most Mefarshim, this is not even supposed to be here. So like we should kind of take it as though it is in gray. That like there's a hint of mishlei, but again, I'm not criticizing your question about mishlei. We can learn mishlei all day, but I think for our purposes tonight, then we'll kind of treat it as an afterthought. Okay, yeah, Vanessa.
In terms of like what lions could be culturally connotated with in terms of Torah, we have, is it when Yaakov blesses the kids and he says Yehuda is like a lion's cub and he grows to the, I don't remember the full thing, but he mentions the lion somewhere in
Yeah,
there.
right.
And like in general, Yehuda is associated with lions, so I think that might be like
right. So I think that probably is a good guess, right? I think lions, no matter what culture you're in, lions are going to be at the top of the food chain,
Right.
or the king of the, whatever you want to say, jungle, savanna, whatever like locale that you're in, and that's why lions are associated with leadership. So yeah, I think that's good. That's more reliable than our fox speculation. Yeah, Racheli?
Okay, for the what is the implication of the lion's tail versus the fox's head?
Yeah.
So this is just a very like general, the whole thing is my dad always used to say this, like whenever I had a question, like should I be in like a higher class or a lower class or whatever,
Yeah.
with those kinds of things, he would say it's better to be with people who are above you so that you'll learn from them than to be like with people who you're technically over, but you won't.
Yeah. Okay, good. I think that is going to be an approach that is the first one that we take here. Okay, let's start going to the Mefarshim here. Okay, now that we got the intuitive juices flowing. Okay, I just thought of something also. Hold on. I think I'm not the biggest I'm not a big Ben Shapiro fan. I think he just wrote a new book that has this title. Hold on a second. Yeah, lions and scavengers. I didn't associate that to that until I just now, because foxes, I don't think foxes are scavengers, are they? But jackals are, right? Or maybe I'm missing it up. Anyway, I was just associating to that. Okay. I was wondering where he got that. I don't know where he got that from, but anyway. Okay, so let's go to the Mefarshim here. I actually included Rashi. My intention is not to learn Rashi tonight, but I want to pull one thing from Rashi. If we think of something, great, but if not, not. I want to do Rambam. Who do I want to do? Rambam, Meiri, and Sforno tonight. Okay, and then if we find something for Rashi, we'll come back to him. So Rashi says, Bishlom ko Adam, afilu lagoy bashuk, even a non-Jew in the marketplace. Okay, where do you think he's getting that from? Like non-Jew in the marketplace. Sounds kind of out of nowhere.
Kol Adam?
Kol Adam, yeah, right. Okay, so it does not say like, let's say there are statements that refer to your fellow Jew, like v'havta l're'acha k'mocha is not about all people. It's about re'acha. It's about your fellow. But kol Adam means every person, meaning every single human being. And I guess the shuk is the most I don't want to say casual, but like the place where you have no connection to the people in the shuk. It's like everyone in the world's there, So even a non-Jew in the market, that's the part I want to pull out. And a lot of people, a lot of the Mefarshim say this. Better to be a tail to lions, to people who are prominent, rosh v'sar l'rekim, than to be a head and a chief to degenerates. Okay, rekim literally means empty people. Okay, so Rashi puts this in terms of leadership and prominent people and degenerates. Okay, now again, I don't really want to focus on Rashi right now, unless someone has like an idea that just sprang to mind. But I don't want to dwell on Rashi. I want to go right to the Rambam. Okay, let's go to the Rambam. Oh yeah, Vanessa?
I like the non-Jew in the market tidbit because I think that helps a bit unifying the first clause and the second clause. Like,
yeah,
you're not necessarily, as a Jew, you're not going to necessarily lead non-Jews, but the fact that you're associating with all of them, greeting them properly, and you're not just
right.
sucking up to like people who like you want to lead, I think that like also helps temper the idea of like, hey, you can't be arrogant, like you're not doing this to get anything out of it. You have to greet everyone favorably because they deserve it.
That's actually a good insight. I'm going to type this here. Okay, so the question is, why focus on even a non-Jew in the market? So the answer is, first, it's all people. Okay, even those not like you. Second, it's in the market. Random people who you are not going to see again or have any interaction with, and therefore you're not gaining anything material, from this interaction. Okay, so and then third is it's humbling. Okay, like you said before. Okay, so that's a good answer. Okay, now let's do the Rambam. Okay, and the Rambam does not comment on the first clause. I think that's also why I wanted to start with Rashi here. It says like this: Yomar. I'll put this in the chat also. Can I fit both of them? Yeah, I can. Okay, all right. Yomar. So he's saying shehayos ha'adam talmid lemishu yoser chacham mimeno, that being a student to someone who is wiser than you, yoser roy v'yoser tovlo, that is better, is more appropriate and better for you. Miyoso rav lemishu pachos mimeno, better for you to do that than to be a teacher to someone who is inferior to you. Ki b'matzav harishon yitosaf lo, because in the first scenario, if you're a student to someone who's greater than you, then you will gain, you'll increase. Uvasheni, but in the second one, if you're a rav to someone who's inferior to you, then you will you'll diminish. Okay, then you'll lose. The ata yodea, mimasha biarna b'Sanhedrin, from that which we explained in Sanhedrin, shehem samu lefi ikra malim b'kodesh rosh yeshiva shel esrim ushalosha achron ha'echad v'shivim yeshiva gedola. So there was a whole court hierarchy. So the fewest number for a court is three judges. Okay, there were courts of 23, and then the highest court had 71, and they were ranked. The people in each court were ranked. So what they would do is when they needed to add someone to the court of 71, they would take the head of the court of 23, and they would promote him to be the lowest ranking member of the court of 71. So the person who's obsessed with ranking would say, oh, that's a step down. But the way they saw it is it's a step up. It's malim kodesh. It's going up in sanctity. V'rao sheim hosifu lo mala. And they regarded this as though you added an elevation in rank. Okay, so there's the Rambam. So the Rambam is learning this. So let's just summarize it and then we'll analyze. Okay. Okay. So summary. Better to be a student to someone wiser than you than a teacher to someone lower than you, because the first way you'll gain, and the second way you'll lose. And then the proof is promotion from number 1 in a Sanhedrin of 23 to number 71 in a Sanhedrin of 71 is viewed as a step up, not a step down. Okay, now I don't know about you, but I have a major question on this Rambam, major question or problem. Yeah, Racheli?
In every situation, if there's a teacher and a student, one is going to be higher and the other lower. Like, can't.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the practical problem. Okay, that did come up when I was preparing this with Michael Rusa. That it's gonna, but I think what's gonna happen then. Okay, well, okay, let me. Okay, what I was going to say is everyone will like interlock into a pyramid formation of like going all the way up to the top, But I think what you're saying though, are you saying though that like no one is going to want to teach then because
like,
yeah, okay, right.
I don't think everyone would take it so literally, but if they did,
everyone followed this,
yeah.
then there would be fewer, arguably no teachers, right? Because nobody would teach someone lower than them, and everyone would rally around the top chacham. Okay, yeah, okay, so that's a fair problem. Okay. So what this points to, by the way, I'm not going to answer it yet, is that like how can this work? How can this work practically? So what this points to is this is not an absolute statement, right? Like this must be a principle that we should implement, and what we need to figure out is what is the limit of this principle, or what are the factors that mitigate it. So I think it's a good question in that sense. Yeah, Vanessa?
I don't think this is the question you're going for, but how is he assuming that this is about like student versus teacher instead of like, I don't know, rabbi versus layman or any
Okay, that's a good
dynamic?
question. And you saw in the Rashi that I hastily went over, Rashi says it's about leadership in general, right?
Right.
So what leads Rambam to say that this is about students and teachers rather than leadership or something? Yeah. Okay, that's a fair question. I actually don't know the answer to that, but let's see if you can figure it out. Yeah, Tamar?
The proof from the Sanhedrin is a little strange to me in the sense that like you're getting promoted to a higher court. So
Right.
isn't that just a promotion in any framework?
Yeah. Okay. Right. And furthermore, what else is incongruous about the proof and the case he's trying to support here? You have Vanessa?
Again, I don't know if this is what you're going for, but like, okay, that person gets promoted. That might apply to that person, but someone else is still going to be the head of the 23 and like the bottom of the 71. Like, it's a shifting goalpost no matter.
Right. Okay, that is true. That is true. What I was thinking is, furthermore, it's not a pure case of students and teachers, right? Like, yeah, you're learning from hearing the people ahead of you, like in the court, but that's just like in the deliberations. This really, the Rambam's advice, or the Mishnah's advice going to the Rambam seems to be like how to choose a teacher, to be a teacher or to be a student, you know? What does that have to do with Sanhedrin and rankings? Like, it's just like, it seems like a very loose proof, you know? Okay, but none of these are the questions that I'm looking for. And I admit this question is based on a different teaching of Chazal, but it's one that I quote a bunch, and I also feel like it's other people know it, but yeah, I'll give you a hint here. Okay, I have a problem with this. Yeah, Tamar?
Is it the statement about learning from your students?
Yes. Do you remember the statement?
I think it was that I've learned from my teachers and I've learned from my peers, but I learned the most from my students.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna show you the Rambam's version. There's several different versions. This is in the Rambam in the Mishnah Torah, Sefer Hamada, Hilchos Talmud Torah 5:13. Ha-talmidim mosifin chachmas harav umarchivin libo. Students increase the wisdom of the Rav and broaden his mind. Amru Chachamim, the sages said, Harbe chachma lamadati. I have learned a lot of wisdom. Mechavera yeser mirabosai, from my peers more than from my teachers. Umi talmidai yeser mikulam, and from my students more than anyone. The more common version of this is no, I can't find it here. Is the more common version says Torah. I have learned a lot of Torah from my rabbis, more from my friends and the most from my students. But Rambam's version says Chachma, wisdom, which fits what the Rambam is saying here. Okay, and then he says Ukshem she'etz katan madlik as a gadol, just as a small piece of wood kindles a large one. Kach talmid katan mechaded as a rav, so too a small student sharpens his teacher. Ach yotim mimenu b'shelos of chachma before, until he, through his questions, he brings forth wondrous wisdom. Okay, so the question here is, how can the Rambam say that being a teacher to someone lower in wisdom than you will diminish you? In Hilchos Talmud Torah, he says the opposite, that you learn more from your students than your teachers. Okay, so to me that's a huge question. And then the last question is the one that is on the part that the Rambam doesn't comment on, is what does this have to do with greeting everyone first? Okay, so what do we say here? And I think we should start with question 5, because that's the most pressing question. Let me copy and paste this into the chat. Summary, and then questions. Okay, and let me actually, how can I have this all on the screen? Let me make this summary smaller. We don't really need the summary, do we? No, we don't. All right, let's do this. Okay. And also we have to keep in mind our other questions, right? About the lions and foxes and what the mashal is. Yeah, Racheli?
Maybe it's like if you have to choose between the two, like you only have one option, then you should choose to be a student.
Okay. Wait, if you only have one option or if you have 2 options?
No, meaning if you only have one choice, like you have to choose between the two.
Okay, if you have to choose between the two, then better to be a student than a teacher, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like he's
Okay.
basically making a situation where it's either or, not both. I don't.
Yeah, so I like the move that you're making, which is you're saying that it applies in a certain case. I'm not convinced, like, he really is advertising here that, like, you're going to learn a lot more from your students and, like, it's going to, make your chachma wondrous, So it sounds like I don't know, I would choose this. And spoiler alert, I did choose this. Like someone did ask me once, there was a year that in 2021, my setup here in Far Rockaway was such that I was able to go to my Rebbe's, my former Rebbe's Gemara shiur in the morning. it didn't end up working out because I didn't have time to prepare, and it wasn't worth it. And then someone said to me, like, wouldn't you rather be in shiur than like giving shiur? And I said, absolutely not. Like, I would much rather be teaching because I gain more learning from teaching. And that's why I feel so passionately about this question here. That like it seems like the better deal is to be to be teaching. Anyone else? Okay, I have an answer, and I think it's a bad answer, but I do want to say it. And then the Rav Shelot, who is one of the leading contemporary experts on the Rambam, has another answer, which I think is a better answer. Okay, but I'll tell you my answer. If you take the word chachma is a little ambiguous, or at least has multiple meanings. Okay, chachma in I'll just quote from Mishlei. Rashi. Oh no. Do I want to quote from Mishlei? Do I? Let's see. Yeah, chachma. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. So there's chachma, and then there is tavuna or bina. Okay. So a person who has chachma is called a chacham, and a person who has bina or tavuna is called a navon. So Rashi says here on Mishlei 1:5, chacham ze bal shmua. Chacham is someone who possesses literally heard knowledge, but it means like you've received teachings. Navon, though, a navon is musaf al chacham sheyodei lahavin davar mitoch davar, that he knows how to derive something from something else through his understanding. Umosif al shmuaso. Okay, so the maybe a good English translation here that I like to say here is a chacham is a dependent learner and a navon is an independent learner, or a chacham is someone who has received a lot of information or knowledge, but it's all received. But a navon has internalized it and understood it to the point where he can like activate it and can like derive new knowledge from it. Okay, so if you go with that definition of chachma, I'll summarize later. So if you go with that definition of chachma, we have to remember that these are the sages of the Mishnah. Torah Sheba'al Peh was not written down yet. Okay, when these people said these things, and even after Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi wrote them down, Torah Sheba'al Peh was still passed on orally, and the Gemara hadn't been written yet. So I think the idea is like this: if someone is wiser than you in the sense that they have more knowledge than you, okay, so then, and you have the opportunity to learn from them, you need to learn as much as possible from them, because there's no way to generate that on your own. So if you, let's say, for example, you, again, it's hard for us to imagine here, but imagine a world in which all of the Torah Sheba'al Peh is by word of mouth, and so the only way to get it is to become an apprentice to someone who is greater than you in Torah Sheba'al Peh knowledge. Let's say you go there and you learn for 10 years and you absorb all of their knowledge. So now you're in a position to teach it. Let's say you only learn for 1 year and then you go and you start teaching. Well, your knowledge sources are not going to increase. And in fact, they might even dwindle because you're not adding to it, and you're not like, and you're, people forget or whatever, So I think if you say that the chachma here, so this is my first answer. I'll write it out now. So, answers. Here we go. Answers. So this is answer number 1 to question 5 is if chachma refers to received knowledge, okay, then anyone who still has knowledge to learn should subordinate himself or herself to someone who can give them that knowledge, okay? And if they set themselves up as an authority but don't have all the knowledge, it can only go downhill, but they won't be able to develop more knowledge on their own, okay? Now, this is slightly difficult in the world that we live in, because in the world we live in, there is such a thing as like widespread books and other sources of information. So the question would be, how do you apply this nowadays? But I do think that there are forms of knowledge that you can only pick up from getting it from someone else. So let's say, for example, in our yeshiva, methodology of thinking is something that you can really you do need to apprentice with. Like, you're watching someone think and you're being trained in thinking. And that's something you can only really get from experience. Or I think apprenticeship in other areas, like if you're a chef or if you're a craftsman, like there's certain types of knowledge that you have to get by like absorbing it from people. I mean, the most absurd example, not absurd, bad, but like I was watching over the summer Chef's Table, which is a Netflix documentary series about like cooking. And this was on the noodles season. And this guy, this big burly guy, made it his goal to learn the art of handcrafted pasta. And he went all over Italy. Like he said, every grandmother has her own like masora, her own like traditions of like how to, like what shapes to make and how to make it and what the techniques are. And he basically wanted to try to absorb as many of these techniques as possible before these women died and then these traditions were lost, So like, it's a interesting thing that like there's no other place to get that information than from old Italian women, and the only way to learn it is to like be with old Italian women in their kitchens, like learn from there. There's no way to generate it on your own. And if he said, oh, I learned for a year and I'm going to start my own pasta place, he's not going to develop in gaining more pasta chachma. Okay, he has to get it from the source. So that's my answer. Okay, I don't think it's a bad answer in the sense that I don't think there's anything wrong with this answer. I'm just not convinced that the Rambam means that. Okay, any thoughts on this before we go to the second answer? Or any examples? Yeah, Tamar?
Does this answer our questions about like you're never gonna have any teachers or
no? Right now I'm answering question 5.
Right,
yeah.
Okay.
Although, actually maybe on second thought, maybe you can answer the question about practically speaking, how is this going to work? So practically speaking, in the time of Torah Sheba'al Peh, this is how it worked, is that you would try to absorb all of the Torah Sheba'al Peh from your Rebbe, and he would absorb it from his Rebbe and so on. And so it was like, I mean, I guess it doesn't fully answer it because there was simultaneous teaching going on. So scratch that. Never mind. Okay, let's do Rav Shelat's answer. So Rav Shelat, which I think is a better answer number 2 to question 5, is as follows. This is another good resource to know about for those who are independent learners. Okay, so on Pirkei Avos, you have on again, Al Torah, just has everything, and it's having more of everything every second. Perush mishnah of the Rambam. Okay, so there's that. Now the Rambam wrote it in Arabic, in Judeo-Arabic, and they have, oh no, they don't have it here. Okay, but what they do have is a Biaor Leperush Rambam Mishnah, a commentary on the Rambam's commentary on the Mishnah by Rav Shelat. So that's what I'm reading from. So he says like this. I forgot to articulate one thing. Okay. Sorry. But in Hilchos Talmud Torah, Rambam is talking about gains in understanding and insight. Okay. And that will come from teaching someone on a lower level than you, because their questions will force your clarity and development. Okay, so in other words, information wise, you should be subordinate to a Rebbe who has more knowledge than you, but thinking skills wise, or not thinking skills, insight wise, creative thinking wise, and like understanding wise, it's better to teach than to learn. Okay, that's just the completion of that answer there. I was just leaving it in implication form. Okay, Rav Shelat says like this. Regarding the Rambam statement that about someone who becomes a Rav to those who are beneath him, that their chachma will diminish. We need to understand this does not contradict what we learned earlier that the Rambam quoted, I learn more from my students than all of them. That the one person who can learn from his students is someone who learned a lot first from people greater than him. Okay. Gam mipnei shebishvil lahagia ledrega shel umitamida yes mikulam yesh tzorech ba'anava. Furthermore, in order to reach the level where you can say, I learn more from my students than everyone, you have to have humility. Umisha kofetz lihios rav, and someone who leaps to become a rav, kishu yachol lehamshich lihios talmid, when he could continue being a talmid, he's not going to have the humility to learn from his students. Okay, so two answers here. Okay, so one answer, this is from Rav Shelot, is that in order to reach the level where you can learn more from your students than your teachers, you need to learn a lot from your teachers. Okay, and his second answer, so this is our third answer to question number 5, also Rav Shelot, is in order to learn from your students, you need humility. But the guy who skips ahead to become a Rav, okay, and in my opinion, the good example of this is like online smicha, okay, right? I'm sure you can get online smicha somewhere, right? So if you do that, he won't have, the guy who skips ahead to become a Rav won't have the humility to actually learn from his students, okay? So I think these are two good answers also. And you know, now that I think about my answer is, I think, better than I initially gave it credit for. What do you guys think of these other two answers here? Or do you have real world examples that might help illustrate this? Yeah, Racheli?
I kind of disagree with the third answer.
Okay.
Like, I think it could make sense that that's what Rambam was implying.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's true that like you won't have humility because you become a teacher and therefore you won't learn it all from your students. Like I don't know. I think that's just a very grand statement, and you can definitely still learn from your students even if you're not like super humble. I don't know.
Right. So I'll tell you where I think Rav Shelot's getting it from. And he doesn't say this, but I just know this from the Rambam. So the Rambam uses the word shulim in Hilchos Talmud Torah in one other place, I think. Okay, and so when I describe this person, or when the Rambam describes this person, maybe you'll see where at least where he's coming from, unless I'm totally wrong. Oh, is he only used shulim once in the whole Mishnah Torah? This better be the right place, otherwise I'm misremembering. Yep. Okay, this is it. Okay, so he says like this. Oh yeah, this is good. Okay, so he's the subject here is people who are not about readiness to be a posek, to you know, adjudicate halacha. Any student who has not reached the level where they can paskin, where they can, you know, rule on halachic matters, and paskins, we did this in Pirkei Avos. Harizeh shote rasha v'gas ruach. He's an idiot, he's an evil person, and he's haughty. Alav nemar ki rabim chalalim hipila. And regarding this, it says in Mishlei, she felled many corpses. So too, if you're a chacham who reached the level to paskin, and you don't paskin, then you're withholding Torah, and you're putting stumbling blocks in front of the blind. Regarding this, it says, strong, powerful are all those who she killed. Okay, now here's the part I wanted to get to. Elu hatamidim, these students, haktanim, these inferior students, shelo hirbu Torah korai, who have not amassed Torah sufficiently. They want to seek glory in front of the ignoramuses, and among the people in their cities. The kofsim v'yoshim b'rosh, they skip ahead and sit at the front. Ladun u'lahoros b'Yisrael, to judge and to paskin in Israel. Okay, so these are people who are like young whippersnappers who go to 1 year of yeshiva and then they come back and they want to be the rabbi and they want everyone to call them rabbi and they want honor and they want to paskin for people, you know, and they're saying, you know, the halacha is this and the halacha is that, like, oh, you're wrong, you know, those guys, and I know them very well. Okay, thankfully we don't have that many in our yeshiva now, but I have met a couple who have come through. Heim hamarvim masamachlokos. Those are the ones who multiply machlokas in Klal Yisrael. V'heim hamachrivim masolam. They destroy the world. V'hamachabim nera shel Torah. They extinguish the lamp of Torah. V'hamachablim kerem Hashem tzavakos. They destroy the vineyard of Hashem, Master of Legions. V'alav amar Shlomo b'chachmaso. This is what Shlomo meant in his wisdom when he said, "Ochazu lanu shualim katanim mechablim karamim v'karmenu smadar," which I don't know shirim poetic Hebrew, so I'm gonna have to cheat. Oh, my dove that is in the cleft of the nope, that is not it. Catch the foxes for us, the little foxes that ruin the vineyard, for our vineyards are blossoming. Okay, so it's really talking. To answer your question, Racheli, and again, I'm not. If you really object to this, then you object to it. But I'm saying, Rambam. I think if Shelad is referring to what I think he's referring to, which is what I just read, which again is the only place in the Mishnah Torah that the Rambam talks about inferior students. It's the only place he talks about foxes, and he calls them inferior students. We're talking about a certain personality type that just wants to lord it over the masses and to be called rabbi and to like be the one who paskins, you know. And I gave this example. And I didn't give this in a shiur. There's someone who I actually now know who is not like this, but when I went on NCSY Kollel when I was 17, there was someone my age who said, like, as if he was actually going to do this, I'm going to write a Chumash commentary. Like, I want to write a Chumash commentary, you know? And I'm like, I mean, like, you know, I think all the people, my guess is that all the people who do write Chumash commentaries got to the point where they had the knowledge and then felt the need to give it over. I don't think they start off at 17 like, I want to be a guy who wrote a Chumash commentary, you know? Like, so and again, I don't know what was going on in this guy's head, but it struck me at the time, and I wasn't even like Jewish for a year yet. It struck me at the time, like, whoa, slow down. Like, maybe say I want to learn Chumash first, not write a commentary, you know, like so I think that's the the gist of this Shelad answer. Yeah. And that's what it means they won't have the humility. Like, I don't think that person is going to be like you know, it's like, you know, the internet people, the internet commenters who are always like I'm smarter than you, I know everything. Those are not the people who are like sitting down with students saying like, I want to learn from you. I want you to expose to me the areas that my knowledge is lacking, you know? Yeah. Okay, Tamar?
I'll just make sure I remember what I was going to say.
Sorry, yeah, that was a long tirade.
Yeah, yeah. I was just saying that I like these answers because I feel like this is a good way to navigate the fact that these things are really both true. I mean, they're both considerations.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like if you learn more from your students, then why does anyone even bother having a teacher? But like, of course, that's not how it works. And I think this is kind of spelling that out. Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah. I think considerations is the good operative word here. Now I see in the chat, Rivka says, maybe diminish you does not simply mean humility. Or sorry, does simply mean humility, thinking less of one's own importance and more about how to give over knowledge or guidance. And it's more of an acknowledgement than a warning. Let me just think about it for a second. Diminish you does simply mean humility, thinking less of one's own importance and more about how to give over knowledge or guidance. Something is not clicking, just in my understanding of this. So, we diminish you. So, I mean, if you teach people who are on a lower level, it will diminish you. Oh, meaning it will make you humble. But he's saying not to do that. I think that's what's not clicking. I'm reading what you wrote as being positive. I don't know if that's what your meaning is. And Ram's saying it's negative. So I feel like I'm missing something. Either I'm missing something or you're taking the phrase diminishing you as a positive, which I don't think the Rambam is saying.
Yeah,
So
I was taking it as a positive.
Okay, yeah, right. So I think that's a true idea, but I don't think that's what the Rambam is saying.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, let's do this. Okay, we have not answered all of our questions on the Rambam yet, but I want to go to the Meiri, who also says that this is about learning and teaching. I think he gives us another nuance, but also takes the Mishnah in a different direction. Okay, so the Meiri says like this. Rabbi Masya ben Harash Omer, Havi Maktim B'Shalom V'Adim. So he does explain the first one. He's Hirushis Ahiv Eitzel Abrios. He warned us to become beloved by people. V'Hushi Chabdim, by honoring them, V'Yakdim B'Shlomam, and greeting them first. Okay, so that's his first thing. Okay, he's saying, I'm just going to summarize the Meiri here. Summary is greet people first so that you'll become beloved by people by honoring, greet, hold on, let me put this in the order that he said. Okay, become beloved by people by greeting them first and honoring them. Okay, next. This is saying you should strive to perfect yourself as much as possible. You should not view yourself as perfect or complete, and not in need of anyone else. As long as you know that there is someone who's wiser than you. V'amar, and he's saying, Sh'im roe ba'atmo shiuchol l'lamed la'acherim, that if you see in yourself that you are able to teach others, achar shiroi gamkein shiachol l'dayin lilmod mizlaso, and you also see that you can still learn from others, yishtadel lilmod al tachlis mash'af sharlo. You should strive to learn as much as possible. This is like what Racheli was saying, I think, right? That if you have a choice, then you should strive to be a student, okay? But he's saying one more important thing, which we'll get back to. This is what it means when it says be a tail to lions and not a head to foxes. Klomar, noach lecha lios tamid legedolim, better for you to be a student to the great, mishatihe rav lektanim, than to be a teacher to the inferior. So it brings a proof from if you walk after the chachamim, with them and after them, behind them, and then broexilim yiroa, and if you one who shepherds fools will be broken. Uminhag haroe lolechas rishon of hatzon acharav. The minhag of the shepherd is to walk ahead, and the sheep will follow behind. I happened to have had a guest over for Shabbos when I was preparing this, who is a convert from Mexico, whose parents are from Mexico. And I wondered aloud, I said, I always picture shepherds as like walking behind their sheep. And he said that his dad shepherded for a while, and that what you do is you he didn't call it an alpha sheep, but like the implication was like you get a sheep to be in the front and like you train all the other sheep to follow it, and then you can go in the back. But apparently the sheep need to be following someone. But I guess in my mind, I imagine people like chasing sheep from behind, but I guess that's not correct. Okay, so then he says, the second statement is in our summary here is strive to complete yourself as much as possible and don't see yourself as being complete. And then practically, as long as you know someone who is wiser than you, strive to learn from them, okay? Even though you are able to teach others and presumably will be teaching them, okay? Yeah. Okay, so that's the Meiri. So that's why I mean the Meiri is a further development of the Rambam. So what do you, before we talk about the first clause, okay, what I think the Meiri helps us with the Rambam, okay? Because he's giving the same advice, but I think he's like talking it out a little bit more. So what do you get from the Meiri that like, that answers or like makes the Rambam more understandable? Yeah, Vanessa?
I think he gives a more, it's not just nuance, but like I think it balances how to do this in practicality and
yes,
gets us out of the dichotomy of like teacher versus student. Like you can be both, and like you should always be aware of how deficient you are and where you could be growing and what you have left to learn. But you also should also like be realistic. Like if you're able to teach, like you should be teaching. Like that is a value we have, right? Like raising students and like learning from them and all that.
Right.
So being able to do,
okay, good.
Yeah.
So he doesn't speak of this advice as a rigid dichotomy, okay? Either be a teacher or be a student, okay? But I tell you, he does two things. One is acknowledges that you can do both, but the emphasis is on striving, okay? But then also, I think, anyone else, I'll open the floor one more time. Anyone else see the difference? That is one difference in the Meiri versus the Rambam, but I think there's another difference that about what his emphasis is that we didn't quite see in the Rambam.
All right, could you put this in the chat?
Yeah, the Meiri in the chat? Yeah, hold on. Meiri in the chat. Oh no, it's too long. Okay, hold on. Okay. I think there's a key line in the Meiri that at least jumps out to me as like a something that I did not see in the Rambam. So for me, it's this: the al yira atmo nishlam ukabilti tzarich lizolaso, that he should not see himself as complete and not in need of others. Okay, so I think what he does is he's putting this. He also puts the emphasis on how you view yourself. okay, which might relate to Rav Shelat's answer to the Rambam here, is like, in other words, it's not that this is telling you don't teach, just learn, okay? Rather, it's saying don't view yourself as though you've graduated from yeshiva, okay, and no longer need a teacher, okay? Even if you are going into teaching, you should still view yourself as deficient and always be seeking to learn from someone else. And this, I believe, answers question number, question number, what was the question about the pyramid scheme? 2. Okay, the question number 2 on the Rambam, which is, this allows for a more fluid hierarchy of teachers who are still students but also teaching students, okay? And I think like that's gonna be the way that we solve the Masorah. So everyone is still learning and still teaching, but like you are not viewing yourself as though you're complete. And this is a question that I think a lot of I've seen a lot of non-religious Jews who have a family member who is in yeshiva, and they don't get it. They're like, well, when do you graduate? Especially in our, I know in yeshiva in Israel, there's like most people go for 1 or 2 years. Here, I went for 7 years. There's people who joke they're in year 13, year 28, and it's not a thing where you graduate and then you're done learning. That's a non-Jewish idea, or at least in some non-Jewish circles, like in academia, or at least the I don't know, the popular view of certain things, like, oh, you're an expert, but no, that's not how it works here. Yeah, Vanessa?
I was just gonna say, I really like how the first clause ties into this. I think that's why he says, he puts the emphasis on, you should be beloved by other people, because he's trying to cultivate this sense of, we're all interdependent and, we're not perfect, not in a sense of, oh, we all have stuff to progress to, but, we are all incapable of perfection. Only Hashem is perfect. So, we all have something we can learn from other people, and, humbling yourself and, making yourself beloved by other people, gives you access to being able to learn from them and interact with them. And
okay, so that's a good answer to a question that I wanted to take up. Okay, so I'll ask the question, and then and then I think we need to solve this. Okay, so another question here is, what is he saying in the first clause about becoming beloved by people? Okay, do we really value public opinion in this way, to the point where we want to become loved, right? That doesn't seem like a Jewish value. Okay, so that's the question. Now Vanessa is answering by saying that becoming beloved by people opens the door to learning from them. Okay, I'm not sold on that. Can you say it one more time?
I think what I'm trying to say is hold on. It's easier for me when I have the Meiri in front of me.
Sure, I'll scroll up to the Meiri.
Thank you. By honoring them and greeting them first. So I think the point isn't, I think some of this might also just be funky. I think the emphasis is less on being beloved, but honoring them and greeting them and just having love shared between them, not making yourself beloved, but cultivating a loving relationship between people. Because when you're
I think that's a good idea, but I don't think that's what he's saying. He's saying there are ways to say that, is to spread love between people or whatever. He's saying you must be yisahev, you must become beloved by people. So the emphasis is on them loving you, not you loving them.
I need to think it out.
Yeah. Now I'll ask one more question also, which is and how does this relate to the second clause?
I'm sorry, he said your Hebrew name before, but I don't remember it, and I only have the name Galina. But she said in the chat, it's much harder to learn from jerks, and I think that's part of it. I think that's
okay. Good. So that I'm on board with. Okay. So you're saying that becoming beloved by people is going to make. Oh, I didn't even see that in the chat. Yeah, it's much harder to learn from jerks. Yeah. So you're going to be a better teacher if people love you, right? That's definitely the case. Okay. So can we now unify the two? Because like, is this just, yeah, like how, let's just get a tighter unity between the two clauses. Actually, what I want to do, I want to read you something. Okay, this is where my mind went, and I think this could be consistent with that approach. So the only place I know in the Rambam where he explicitly talks about becoming beloved by people is in the context of Chilul Hashem and Kiddush Hashem. Okay, so there are primary halachos of Kiddush Hashem and Chilul Hashem which have to do with when you give up your life for halacha. There are other cases where if you do a mitzvah lishma, then that's for its own sake, then that's Kiddush Hashem. If you do an avera for its own sake, like out of rebellion, then that's a Chilul Hashem. Then the last one is the one that we colloquially call Chilul Hashem. He says, there are other matters included in desecrating the name. When a person great in Torah and renowned for piety does things that people murmur about on his account, even though they're not transgressions, he has nevertheless desecrated the name. For example, if he makes a purchase and does not pay for it immediately, though he has the money, so that the sellers must pursue him and he evades them. Or if he engages excessively in joking or in eating and drinking among the ignoramuses. Or if his speech with people is not pleasant and he does not greet them with a cheerful countenance, but is argumentative and angry and similar such things. All is according to the stature of the Chacham. The greater the Chacham, the more exacting he must be with himself, and he should act beyond the strict letter of the law. So that's Chilul Hashem. Then Kiddush Hashem is likewise, if the Chacham is exacting with himself, and his speech with people is gentle, and his disposition is mingled with them, which means like he gets along with them. That's how we say it in English. And he greets them with a cheerful countenance. Again, it was a greeting, not the same exact expression here. And when insulted, does not insult in return. And when he shows honor even to those who treat him lightly, and he conducts business faithfully, and he does not spend much time in the ways and gatherings of the masses. And he is seen always engaged in Torah, wrapped in tzitzis, crowned with tefillin, and conducts all his deeds beyond the strict letter of the law, so that he does not distance himself excessively and does not appear bewildered. And so everyone praises him, loves him, and longs for his deeds. Okay, behold, this person has sanctified the name. Concerning him, the verse says, and he, God, said to me, you are my servant Israel, in whom I will be glorified. Okay, so that is in Hebrew, okay, so that's where the Rambam talks about the role of being loved. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and chime in with this answer here. Is we don't care about being loved for its own sake. Okay, rather we care, a chacham should want to be loved because that will allow him to have a greater beneficial influence on others. Okay, whether, and I'll incorporate what Rivka said, on others, whether by Kiddush Hashem, by teaching, by role modeling, or in other ways. Okay, so it's not about you want people to love you. It's about if people love you, then you can be a better instrument of the good, of like spreading the good. Okay, so now in light of that, can we have a tighter explanation here about the unity of the Mishnah? And I don't want it to just be about being a teacher. Like there's this unique message of the Meiri of don't view yourself as perfected, constantly see yourself as being in need of like following other people, and also greet everyone so that they love you. So how do we unify those? And I'm going to sit here nervously trying to remember the idea I came up with on Shabbos because I don't remember it right now. Oh, I have it now. Yeah, Racheli?
So basically just like trying to condense everything into one. Okay. So maybe the point is that the important thing to focus on is always viewing yourself as a student and recognizing that you have more to learn and simultaneously being a good role model for other people, and by being beloved, they'll be more likely to follow your model.
Okay, I think that's on the right track. I think there's just one piece that is either missing or is just not being emphasized to the level that I think Meiri is emphasizing it. Tamar?
I was thinking maybe this is kind of like a almost, it's a funny way of saying it, but like a team player mentality.
Okay.
Like you want everyone to get closer to Hashem. So you're thinking about what you need, which is to learn from people that are wiser than you.
Yeah.
But in terms of what you have to offer, you're also going to try to be a good influence on other people.
Okay, that's also good. Okay. Anyone else have anything? I think both of those are on the right track. Yeah, Vanessa?
I think in terms of your actions, you should always act as best as you can so that you should always act to be a Kiddush Hashem. But in terms of thinking about yourself, you should never think like, oh, I'm a walking Kiddush Hashem, right? Like you should always be aware of where you stand and like where you have room to improve. But you should always be aware that like you're not going to be able to cultivate any change if like you're denigrating the face of it, like the name of Hashem, like I'm not articulating this well, but like I don't know. I feel like
okay. I'll just remind you of one thing, by the way, just to clarify in case this wasn't clear. I brought in the Kiddush Hashem thing from the Rambam because that's where he talks about it. But just to be clear, the Meiri is not mentioning Kiddush Hashem, so don't feel obligated to put that into the Meiri. Okay.
I'm not obligated. I thought it was just helpful.
Okay, it was good. Yeah. Okay. Let me try this. Okay. And I don't know if this is what I said on Shabbos, but we'll see if it's a good idea. Okay. So the main idea is like this, and I like the phrase that Tamar used of the team being a team player. I think the unified idea of the Mishnah is how, as a teacher, to best contribute to the right, to cultivate, how to best cultivate the right kind of Talmud Torah culture in Klal Yisrael. Okay, we want an environment where everyone capable of teaching, okay, is teaching, but is also continuing to learn, okay, and all the students are emulating that behavior, okay, like that's the norm, not something that is only true on top. So you need everyone to love you so that they will look up to you and be and follow you as a role model. And what you are modeling is the proper mentality of seeing yourself as deficient and in constant need of a superior teacher. Okay, so I think what you guys were saying about the role models is true, but I think he's focusing specifically on role modeling for Torah study. And I'll give you a personal example of this. Is the best shiurim in our yeshiva was back in the day when Rabbi Israel Chait, our Rosh HaYeshiva, would give Shavua shiur. Okay, and I mean the time before mine, the shiurim were even more impressive. But even in my day, it would be like a 6-hour shiur on the first day of Shavuos, and he would take one area and raise 20 something questions, and we'd have all these sources, and no one would really know, be able to see an answer. And then he would make one move, and it would answer all the questions, and then the second day would be developing that whole answer. And the thing that was great about it was not the learning for me. I mean, the learning was great also. What was great about it was all of the heavy hitters would come to town for this. So all of the Rosh HaYeshiva's greatest students would come to town, and they would be learning from the Rosh HaYeshiva. And it was set up in a way where he would sit in the middle, and his greatest students would kind of be sitting in pods, and their students would be around them, and all the other students would be around them. So everyone was listening to the same shiur, but you knew that the great people were hearing it on a higher level. And when you needed to know if you understood it correctly, you would ask someone next to you and ask. There was this whole trickle down culture of Talmud Torah where we were inspired by seeing the greatest chachamim we know listening to their Rebbe, and then when we saw our Rebbe talking about his Rebbeim, about Rav Soloveitchik and Rav Moshe Feinstein, that's even a better role model, so that's what you want to embody. And I think that's why it is important to cultivate love and the honor to the other person, because it opens the channels for them looking at you in a way where they want to be like you. So that's my theory about the Meiri. Okay, ready for one more? Sforno? Okay, Sforno, just like the Meiri kind of overlap with the Rambam, I think Sforno kind of overlaps with the Meiri. Okay, much shorter. Even greet the people who you do not associate with, literally who you do not become friends with, afilu lios lahem l'rosh o l'zanav, even to be for them a head or a tail. Okay, so you see he's explicitly connecting the two. He's saying, why does it have to say kol adam? Even the people who you're not being a head or a tail to. Okay, al techdal milakadim bishlomam al derech anava v'chiba. Do not refrain from greeting them out of humility and affection. There's where Vanessa said in the very beginning, okay, is that this is a way to cultivate humility, okay? So you have, by the way, for the Rambam doesn't say why you should greet people, but you have Meiri says greet people to become beloved. Sforno says greet people out of humility and affection. Okay, so those are two separate things. Okay, Amnam, however, heavy zanav la rayos. You should be a tail to lions. Ki b'chevrasam tosif al ma'alascha v'tihe ari, because through their friendship, you will increase or enhance your stature, and you will become a lion. Ki'inyan, as it says, holech as chachamim yachkam. It says, that's what's advertised in Mishlei, one who follows the wise will become wise. Valti rosh l'shualim, and do not become a head to jackals. Ki as tishtamish b'ma'alascha, because then you will utilize your stature l'ha'ir lahem, to illuminate for them, v'lo tosif, and you will not increase, v'ulai tamit, and you will maybe decrease. Ki'inyan, as it says, v'ro eksilim yiroa. One who befriends, who shepherds fools will become broken. Okay, so what is the, let's just cut to the chase here. What is the main idea according to him? Okay, I will break it down. We'll break it down. So main questions are, sorry. Question 1, how is he learning the first clause? Okay, and this is really where Vanessa's question comes in very handy. What is the hava amina? Okay, why might we think, what might we think and why? Okay, so that's question 1. Question 2 is how is he, sorry, it's supposed to be how is he learning? How is he learning the second clause? Okay, what's all this talk about, about, your stature and becoming a lion and using your stature to illuminate for them, okay, which will diminish you. And then the third question is the question we've been asking, what is the unified idea? Okay, Tamar?
I think I'm not understanding how to parse the beginning.
Yeah.
I know we didn't explain what head and tail means, but what does it mean in terms of the conditional? I don't know if I'm just not understanding how the parts of the sentence fit together.
The whether to be their head or their tail. How about even to be their head or tail? Do not.
My question is it's people who you don't associate with, and it's modifying that, or you should greet them. I'm just not understanding.
Yeah. All right. So let me actually, I'm going to go ahead and just set up the answer just factually here. Okay. Answer to question 1. The hava amina is that you should only greet people that you associate with, but do not greet people who you don't associate with. Okay, so only greet people you associate with, that's as for example, your followers or your leaders. Okay, but don't greet people who you don't associate with. I think we could use the example that Rashi gave, like a non-Jew in the market. Okay, so I'm not going to answer this yet. I'm just going to set it up. Rav Masya is telling us that we should even greet people we don't associate with. Okay, why? And then that's for the first one. Does that clarify the facts?
Yeah, so being the head of the tail is a type of associating.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And if you prefer the word associate, yeah, I think associate probably is the best word, because it's literally means to join with, like chibur, but yeah. Vanessa?
The way I see the unified idea, it's trying to answer the question of how are we supposed to generally associate with people. So
Yeah.
the baseline is just to be greeting people and being humble before them and treating, associating with everyone favorably, whether or not you can get something out of them, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And then going forward, like you can't just like be nice, like, okay, cool, but like you have needs as a person. Like you can't just be like, hey, how are you? That's like doesn't get you anywhere in life.
Right.
So in situations where you have something to learn, you should be a tail. You shouldn't be looking to like be a what's it called? A big fish in a small pond.
Yeah.
So you should always like if you're in a situation where like, okay, you're not always supposed to look to get what you want. That shouldn't be your first inclination in how you interact with people. The first interaction you should have is like being humble before them and affectionate and like, you know, like seeing the Telem in everyone.
Yeah.
But then beyond that, when you do have to just like functionally address your needs, like practically speaking, you should look to be not just to fulfill your ego and to feel like, oh, like I'm on top of this, like I can associate with these people. I know I'm not articulating this so well.
Okay. So I actually think I agree with what you. Okay, I'm not going to give it away yet. I do think he's saying you should be a big fish in a not in a small pond, but he is saying this is how you become a lion. So he's not dissuading you from wanting to become a lion.
No, that's not what I meant. I meant
Yeah.
more like don't settle. Don't feel like
Okay,
the
that
goal is
part's
to be
true, right.
like you shouldn't just feel like, oh, I should be the head and like that's it, I've made it. Like that's not the goal
Right.
here.
Okay,
But
good. I think you're on the right track. And by the way, I'm going to give you a cryptic hint here. Structurally, something that you said earlier tonight, I think fits with the Sforno. I know that might not help because you said a lot of stuff. Okay,
really big
but
Rambam.
I when you said it earlier, I was like, oh, that's going to fit into the Sforno really well. Okay, so we'll get back to that. Okay, Racheli?
Okay, I might be going out on a bit of a limb here,
Okay.
but maybe a different Hava Amina could be that someone would interpret it to be, why should you greet every person like the Meiri said, so that you're beloved? And his goal is to help you recognize that you want to greet people not like for an extrinsic goal, but purely for the sake of love of all people.
Okay, so the reason why I don't think he's saying that is because he says it's out of humility. I mean, okay,
Affection.
affection you could say. Affection you could say that that's you know, part of this. Unclear
Kind
yeah.
of separate from the rest of it, but
Yeah, right. Okay, yeah, I hear that. You know what's funny, by the way? In the English Sforno I have, I don't know why, but Rabbi Pelkovich just takes out the English affection. He just has a humility. But I mean, that doesn't really apply here. But yeah, I don't want to ignore the humility part. So like in other words, I don't think what he's saying is contrary to the Meiri. Like I do think you could have an idea of like love here, but we got to account for the humility part because that's that he says outright.
well, maybe that like the goal less than to have an outcome of like when I greet them, then I will become beloved is to just cultivate those certain attributes in yourself.
Okay, like independently.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good move, right? You're not trying to do it as a transactional thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tamar?
I guess I have a question of like, what is he saying is going to happen in the Fox case? Like,
Yeah.
What scenario is that? Because I don't feel like I understand that.
Okay. I also don't fully understand this. It sounds like okay. So I'll say one thing that I think makes sense. I hope is I think he is specifically. I think we've been in this mode of thinking about the teachers and students for a while. Okay. But notice he doesn't say anything about teachers and students. He just quotes the pasuk in Mishlei. Okay, so I think he actually means fools. Okay, and I think that this is what Rashi meant when Rashi said, "Don't be a leader to degenerates, to rakim." So I think what's going to happen is if you are someone who is trying to be a leader to degenerates, okay, and he used this cryptic phrase: "You will use your stature to give light to them." Okay. You are not going to gain because they're degenerates. They're not offering you anything, and they might drag you down with them. I know I'm not fully answering. I'm not answering this. See, okay, I'll give you a hint here. Okay, I think the key lies in humility. You will add to your stature and become a lion, and you will use your stature to give light to them, but you will not gain. You maybe will diminish. I think if you think about all these three things, then I think you'll get the topic of the Mishnah according to Sforno. So what's the subject of the Mishnah according to the Sforno that unifies all three? Okay, in the interest of time, I'm going to tell you because I do want to try to end as close to 8:30 as possible, and we're at 8:30. So I think what he's saying here is the subject of the Mishnah is how to regulate your own desire for esteem, okay, or for kavod, okay? So what's the first step? The first step is to go to the extreme of humility, okay? And put yourself in a situation where you're humbling yourself before every person, okay? And the way you do that, one easy way to practice it is by greeting everyone you see, even a goy in the marketplace, someone you have no association to, so you don't identify with them and you don't get anything out of them, like we said earlier. But like Vanessa said, the only thing that you have in common is they're a fellow human being, Tselem Elokim, okay? And it'll humble you. It'll also humble you because, like Vanessa said earlier, you're not waiting for them to acknowledge you. You are acknowledging them, okay? So you're subordinating yourself to them. And then look, to be frank here, I'm someone who is not from New York City. I'm from Seattle. And in Seattle, everyone says hi to each other and on the street, even strangers. And you say, good morning. In New York, you do that and they look at you like they want to kill you or like you're insane, you know? And so there's also a potential for lack of reciprocity, you know, and getting embarrassed if you say good morning and they just like look at you weird, you know, or if you want to say the frum thing where you say good Shabbos, but because you're Chinese and you're wearing colors and a green hat, then they ignore you, you know, or if you're a woman and you're not dressed, you know, by their standards of frumness, you know, then they ignore you, you know, so there's always a risk of like rejection, you know, so you cultivate humility, okay, that's the first step. But here's the thing, all humans want people, they want honor, okay? All human beings want honor, and Moshe Rabbeinu didn't become the most humble person by magic, okay? You have to figure out how can you be humble, but also what do you do with your desire for honor, okay? So what you do is attach yourself to chachamim with the hope of becoming a chacham, okay? And what this will do is you will, you know, continue to practice humility because you're subordinating yourself to other chachamim and listening to them and being proven wrong by them and like following them and like learning from them. But you're also going to be able to fuel your desire for honor because you're on the route to becoming a chacham yourself, like Shlomo says, okay? And like my Rabbi Moskowitz says, you know, there's a lot of lo lishma, a lot of ulterior motives why people learn. He said the best lo lishma, and he gets this from the Rambam, but the best lo lishma is you know, learn so that you'll be viewed as a chacham, okay? Because if you pursue that and you actually are serious about it, you actually will become a chacham and you'll do what it takes to become a chacham, and then you'll actually like get, you know, all the benefits of chachma. So he's saying you should, if you want to add to your stature, then subordinate yourself to other chachamim, but don't try to be a leader to people who are beneath you, who are fools, because even though they will admire you maybe on the surface or at the beginning, your light will go unheeded by them. In other words, you're not going to be able to gain benefit to them, give benefit to them, and they might drag you down and make you even worse, and or ruin your reputation by association, right? Like, in other words, there are people who I'm not going to name names, but like, you know, there are rabbis, you know, who are regular teachers, and then there are rabbis who go out there and like try to become the rabbi of various celebrities or of like people who are like you should not be associating with, you know, and their stature, their kavod is diminished because people associate them with these people. Or like there's a midrash on this pasuk in Mishlei that says, if you walk into a perfume store, even if you don't buy anything, then you'll walk out smelling like perfume. But if you walk into a leather tanning facility, whatever you call those places, you'll walk out smelling like nasty leather, you know? So if you hang around people who are bad, people will associate you with that badness. Gevura?
Yeah, it just reminded me of a saying that Shakespeare said, love all, trust few, and do harm to none. So in other words, be cordial to everyone, but be careful who you interact with every day.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, and be careful who you interact with every day. I think that's what Sforno is getting at with the Havamina, is that you might think that you should only associate with the very best people, or with people who are going to appreciate you, or people going to like look up to you. No. You got to practice humility. Humility has to be, everything has to be built on a foundation of humility. And that's the irony here, is that you want honor. Your honor has to be built on the foundation of humility. Okay, and in fact, I think, spoiler alert for anyone who's going to listen to my morning Mishlei shiur in yeshiva next week, one of my favorite psukim in Mishlei is, and I'm not saying that this is the idea necessarily, but 1533 is Yiras Hashem musar chachma, the fear of Hashem is the discipline of wisdom. V'lifnei kavod anava, that before honor comes humility, that the only way to get to honor is through humility, okay? Yeah, so I think that's the subject that the Sforno is saying here. Is, just to summarize again, I didn't write down the main idea, so let me write down the main idea. Okay, main idea, and then we'll review. Main idea is the subject is how to get honor from people, okay? Step one, humble yourself. All right, humble yourself before everyone as your default, okay? And then like practice this by greeting people. And I don't think he means this is the only way to do this, or is the only thing you should do. This is like just an easy thing to do for everyone, okay? By greeting people, okay? Step two, subordinate yourself to the wise, okay? So you can learn from them, continuing to humble yourself, okay? But putting yourself on the track for becoming a chacham who is worthy of honor, okay? And then step three is don't fall into the trap of seeking honor from degenerates, because your light will not be appreciated by them, okay? And they might even drag you down, okay? So this is really about how to I think the word that Vanessa said earlier is like to mitigate or to moderate, so something about like that, about the one clause moderating the other. That's like how I'm looking at this. Okay, and then Rivka says, it is easier to genuinely honor humble people. Yeah, it's true. For example, Yitzchak Perlman, who just donated $12.5 million to build, I don't know what that word is, complexes for homeless people in New York. Yeah, all right, I did not know he did that, but yeah. Okay, so let's just compare, let's just review here, okay? Going up, up, up. Okay, so we have basically three approaches. Oh, housing. Okay, that makes much more sense. All right, we have three approaches. Okay, so this is a summary. Okay, so Rambam is talking about Meiri and Sforno. Okay, so Rambam says this mishnah is about prioritizing being a student over being a teacher, okay? And his idea is that if you say according to me, it's that if you're gaining knowledge, you should absorb as much as you can, because you can't get more when you're a teacher. If you're talking about Rav Shelot, you need to be on the level to learn from your students before you can actually be in that position to teach and gain from them. And according to Rav Shelot's other answer, you need the humility and you can't just jump to the top, okay? According to the Meiri, this mishnah is about cultivating a Talmud Torah culture where everyone views themselves as still in need of a Rebbe, okay? You do this by becoming beloved by people, and by modeling this behavior in your own relationships with your teachers and students. And according to Sforno, this mishnah is about regulating your own desire for stature, okay? And it's giving you a three-step program for achieving this. Okay, those are the three summaries of the ideas. Let's see if we answered all of our questions. So we've definitely answered the relation between the first and the second clause according to the Meiri and the Sforno. We did not according to the Rambam, but it's hard for us to know what the Rambam meant because he didn't say anything. Okay, if we wanted to, we could guess what he might be saying, but I don't think we have time for that tonight. What does it mean to be Makdim Shalom in general? So we didn't really delve into this, but it seems to be anything that would acknowledge the other person's presence in a way that like gives them honor, you know? So I think saying hi in some cases would suffice. Inquiring about their welfare would be even better. Making small talk in other cases might be better. Complimenting them. So like anything that is like, you know, putting yourself out there for the other people. What's the significance of greeting people in general and why first? So according to the Meiri, it is a way to become beloved by people, and people do like it when you say hi to them. Except New Yorkers. And then also it is a way of humbling yourself and strengthening the mutual affection of your fellow human. What's the cultural connotation and significance of these animals? None of the commentators that we had really talked about that, other than lions are great and jackals are low. Okay, so whether they're fools or just, you know, inferior students, they're low. Okay, so I think that's all we got for the cultural there. What's the implication of lion's tail versus fox's head? We didn't really delve into that either. They didn't really comment on that. I have seen interpretations about this, but not in our commentaries, and I forgot what they were, so I can't say them. I guess the lion's tail is the thing that follows the lion, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what to do there. Practically speaking, how does one do or not do this? So we said what this means is basically learn from people or lead them. Why? So we gave the reason according to the Rambam, it's going to be better for your learning. According to the Meiri, it's going to be better for everyone's learning. According to Sforno, it's going to be good for your stature. What role does the mishlei pasuk play? So for Sforno, it plays the most important role, which is saying, don't be a leader to fools, because that could drag you down. According to the Meiri, he quoted the pasuk, but he didn't really explain it in a way that like solidly fit into his idea. So I'm not sure what to make of it. What's the havamina? So the havamina we spelled out most explicitly for the Sforno, that you should only greet people that you have a connection with, but not someone who you don't know anything with. But according to that would be transactional, or it would be, you know, somehow investing your ego. I share something with this person, therefore I say hi to them. But saying hi to everyone breaks that. And the havamina of being a teacher, you might think, well, I should be a teacher because teachers learn more from their students than they learn from their teachers. But the Rambam says not so fast. And the Meiri says, don't think that you've graduated from being a student. And then who's the intended audience? So I think the intended audience, this does apply somewhat to all of us, but more so to people who are more advanced in their learning for the Rambam and the Meiri, and really all of us for people who have egos. So who has ego? Me. And so this is for everyone. Okay, any other thoughts before we wrap up for tonight? Sorry I went over time again, but still trying to get into the flow. Yeah, Vanessa?
I really struggle. I'm used to New Yorker behavior because I've lived here my whole life, but
Yeah.
specifically the Jews in my town on Shabbat do not say Shabbat Shalom, and it drives me batty. Like it really like drives me up the wall. I don't get it. Like they act weird when you say Shabbat Shalom, and like for a while I'm like, maybe I shouldn't say it. Maybe I'm bothering them, but like
no. So according to this, you still should say it because you're humbling yourself.
Exactly. So
yeah,
this has been like good to like drill that in.
Good.
Like, no, it's good that I'm saying Shabbat Shalom. Like it's a good, especially because like
yeah.
I dress from or whatever. So like people are seeing an Orthodox Jew, like they should know that like someone's like smiling at them warmly, and like I should also.
Yep.
It's a good thing to also not just like reminder not to say it just to be petty and to be like Shabbat Shalom, like you better say it back, but like to really mean it and to like want to inspire goodwill and like connection with the
very
Jews.
good takeaway going into Shabbos.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like I'm grateful for that like practical insight and like attempt to.
Yeah, and by the way, I'll tell you, it's funny. I learned this last Shabbos, and even though I do say like you know, I do greet people, I've been extra like peppy in like greeting people on the street because of this, and like hopefully it lasts, you know. But yeah. Okay, anyone else have anything to add? Okay, thank you for coming. This was good. And next week, Bli Neder, we'll have next mishnah in Pirkei Avos, and then tomorrow the plan is to start Eov. Okay, so hopefully you can make it. If not, the recordings will be available in the usual places. Okay, have a good night. Good Shabbos. Bye.